It's a Sunday afternoon. The apartment is quiet. You actually have time. Real time. Not stolen time. You open the document, or the file, or the draft, whatever it is for you. The cursor is blinking. And then you close the tab, checked your phone, made coffee you didn't need, and somewhere in the next hour, the window quietly closed and you were left with that feeling. Not relief, not guilt exactly, something heavier. Something that doesn't leave when the day ends. Here's what's strange about that feeling. It doesn't happen with everything. Last week you didn't do laundry for 3 days. No heaviness. No dread. You just didn't do it and eventually did. You skipped a workout. Maybe mild irritation. Nothing that stayed past the next morning. But this thing, the one with the blinking cursor, the feeling is still there. A week later. A month later. Some version of it has been there for longer than you want to say out loud. And the difference is not about discipline, because you have discipline. You've done hard things. You've finished things that mattered less without this weight attached. Carl Jung spent decades in practice watching intelligent, self-aware people systematically fail to do the things they most wanted to do. Not because they were weak, not because the circumstances were wrong. He saw the pattern repeat across patients for long enough that he stopped calling it coincidence. He gave it a name, and the name is not laziness, which means every system you've tried, the timers, the accountability, the habit stacks, has been solving the wrong problem. The right problem is harder, and it starts with one observation that changes everything underneath it. The tasks that matter most are the ones you cannot move, not despite the fact that they matter, because of it. Jung was not a productivity consultant. He was not interested in helping you get more done. He spent his career watching people dismantle their own lives one reasonable decision at a time and trying to understand the mechanism. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, he kept returning to one observation. His patients were not failing because they were weak. They were failing because something inside them had become more invested in the potential than in the reality. He called what accumulated when potential stayed unlived the unlived life. Not a metaphor, a clinical observation, the version of yourself that was supposed to exist by now, the work that was supposed to be done, the person you were moving toward before the waiting began. And here is what he noticed about the unlived life that nobody wants to hear. It does not stay quiet. It does not wait patiently while you get ready. It accumulates weight, and it loads that weight onto everything you attempt in the present. Now, a skeptic would stop here and say, this is just reframing laziness as something poetic. Calling it grief instead of avoidance doesn't change the behavior. It just makes you feel better about not doing the thing. That objection is real, worth taking seriously, because the reframe can become another hiding place. I'm not lazy. I'm grieving is a story that can run for another 5 years just as easily as the old one. So here's the test that separates the two. Think about the specific task, the one you've been avoiding. Now ask, on the days when you had the most energy, when conditions were closest to right, did the avoidance get easier or harder? If it's laziness, it gets easier on good days. Energy reduces resistance. But if you're honest, and this is the part that stings, on your best days, the avoidance got worse, not better. You sat down with energy and capability and found somewhere else to be more efficiently than on your worst days. Sherlock Holmes would say, That pattern does not fit laziness. Laziness is the absence of energy meeting resistance. What you're describing is energy meeting something that intensifies when capability becomes real. There is only one thing that intensifies when you get closer to being able to do it. The confrontation it would require, not with failure, with completion. Because if you finish it, if you actually do the thing you've been protecting, then you find out what it is, not what it could be, what it is. And the unlived life, Jung argued, derives its power entirely from staying unlived. Potential cannot be disproven. The thing you haven't made yet might still be everything you imagined. The thing you make tomorrow is just a thing. That is what you've been protecting, not the work, the possibility of the work. And here is what that costs. Sarani, which is the part of Jung's argument most people stop before reaching. Here is what protecting potential actually costs. Not in the abstract, I mean in the specific. Picture someone you know, not you. Someone adjacent to you, who has been talking about the same thing for 3 years. The business they were going to start, the book they're going to write, the career they're going to change. Notice how fluent they are about it. The detail, the planning, the reasoning for why now isn't quite the right time. Notice also that the fluency has increased as the action has decreased. That is not coincidence. That is the mechanism Jung identified. When the unlived life runs long enough, it stops being a thing you haven't done yet and becomes a thing you have decided quietly, without admitting the decision, that you will not do. But the decision cannot be admitted, because admitting it would require grieving what's been lost. So instead, the story stays open, still becoming, still almost ready, still waiting for the right conditions. And here is the cost that compounds. Every year, the story stays. Your self-image freezes at the moment before the waiting began. You are still the person who is about to do this, still moving toward it, which means you are not updating who you actually are based on what you are actually doing. And a self-image that doesn't update starts reading all incoming evidence wrong. The person who succeeded at this, they had advantages you didn't. The timing was different. The circumstances were different. Something external explains the gap. Not because those things are false. Sometimes they're partly true. But the interpretation is being generated by a self-image that needs the gap explained in a way that keeps the story open. That is the two-sided interest test applied to your own psychology. Who benefits from believing that external factors explain the gap? The unlived life does, because as long as the gap is explained externally, the potential stays intact. The messed up part is this. Jung observed that the more capable a person genuinely is, the larger the unlived life tends to become. Not smaller, larger. Because capability generates more possible versions of who you could become. More possible versions means more accumulated weight. In the gap between possible and actual, mediocre potential does not produce this specific kind of paralysis. The person who cannot start the thing they care about most, who avoids it precisely on their best days, is not demonstrating their limitation. They are demonstrating the size of what they actually believe is possible. Now here is where Jung stops being comforting and starts being useful. He did not offer a system. He did not offer a technique. He offered a confrontation. And the confrontation requires something most productivity advice carefully avoids. You have to grieve specific things, not vaguely, not as a concept. Specific foreclosed versions of yourself. The 35-year-old version who was supposed to have done this already. The version that existed before the specific thing that changed the timeline. The version that would have started when the conditions were right and conditions were never right. Those versions are gone. Not as failures, as closed doors. And here's the steel man for everyone who wants to push back right now. This sounds like giving up. It sounds like making peace with not doing the thing. Grieving the versions that didn't happen feels indistinguishable from accepting that the thing won't happen. That objection is fair. And it has an answer. Grieving a closed door is not the same as closing the one in front of you. It is the opposite. The weight you are carrying into every attempt, the weight that makes starting feel dangerous, is not the weight of the task. It is the accumulated weight of every version you have not yet allowed to be finished. You are not starting from zero when you sit down. You are starting from underneath everything you haven't mourned. And the task cannot hold that weight. Nothing can. So here's where you actually are, not where the story says you are. Here, the task is still there. The capability is still there. What has changed is that you now know what the weight is made of. It is not laziness. It is not lack of discipline. It is every version of yourself you have been keeping alive by not finishing them. And the question that entered part 3 needs an honest answer now. Does grieving those versions mean accepting that the thing won't happen? No. But the answer requires a distinction Jung made that almost nobody repeats. Grief is not defeat. Grief is the acknowledgement that something specific is over, not the work. The version of you who is going to do it differently, earlier, better, under better conditions, with more time, with the younger version of the energy. That person is not coming. Not because you failed, because time moved while you were waiting, and time does not wait for grief to be convenient. Here is what that looks like in practice. Not a ceremony. Not a dramatic moment. One honest acknowledgement that the 35-year-old version, or whatever age marks the moment before the waiting became a pattern, is a closed door. You are not that person. You are this one, sitting here with what's actually available. And what's actually available is different from what was possible then. It is not nothing. It is not lesser in every way. It is just different, and it is the only thing that is real. The work you make from here will not be the work that version would have made. It will be this version's work, made from here, with what's actually available, not what was possible then. That is not a consolation. That is just what is true. Jung did not promise this would feel like relief. He observed that the people who finally did the work were not the ones who found the right conditions. They were the ones who stopped, waiting for a version of themselves that time had already closed. They started from the only place anyone has ever actually started from. Not ready, not resolved, not finished grieving, just done waiting for readiness that was always one condition away. Ready is a story the unlived life tells to keep itself alive. You know what the story costs now? The cursor is still blinking